So, what is a sage?
Sage has been described very clearly in the very ancient classical Chinese medicine book called Yellow Emperor Internal Canon Medicine book. This book has been profound wisdom and knowledge in the Chinese history. There's not only about the Chinese medicine, but lots of people thought is the Chinese medicine book. But in the book, they are described about what is the fundamental blueprint about Earth and the cosmos, which is really amazing because they are talking about what is a human, what is exactly original humans like, has the weather, has the astrology, geography, and what is the cultivation about the land, has mathematically to set up link with the earth's energy and the human energy. So that's why they're very deeply in line with the fundamental design for the earth, and to showing the significant the picture how human being the position on the earth and the heaven. So that's why this book has been guided for lots of scientists to follow it, because there's lots of mathematics to find out like a star position, and also there has their energy and the wider influence about their agriculture and the land, because they have a complete system about the yin and the yang, which is used on their calendar. So that's why they are described that yang calendar and yin calendar to showing what is the earth's designs with yin and yang. And so in the first chapter, they have been set up as their conversation in between the emperor to the doctor, who is called the Qi. And the doctor in the China as a position is the teacher of the emperor. So an emperor has been asked the advice from him. So that's why the whole book is about their conversation and how to understand about heaven, earth, and the human, how to understand the Tao. So the Tao is been the very fundamental understanding in that book. So that's why this book illustrates our human need to understand cosmos and the universe, how is that been formed, and what's our position in it. So that's why they're talking about the 5 different type of the person. It's about 4 type of a person. So it's very interestingly, because these people are the best example in the different degree of how do they function in the society. So can you imagine that the Yellow Emperor book, it's 81 chapter, but the first chapter is talking how human being can be behavior. So they will actually mention about what is the Tao function, but of course that's also linked with the people understand. There's a very ancient book called Dao De Jing, and the Dao De Jing is very already very old, and then start from Lao Tzu, and then people knows as Lao Tzu has been writing that, and then passing by the great wisdom about how is the universe function, was the beginning of the universe, and how human beings start, and how to operate and manage in the country, and how to dealing with different their reality, like how can you understand beyond our life is like a 3D life. So that's why interestingly there's even older book has been discovered in the Tong, which is 2,500 years ago. There's the Tong newly discovered by the scientists in 1973. They find this Tong contained the De Dao Jing.
The tomb contained the De Dao Jing.
Yeah, the De Dao Jing rather than Dao De Jing, because it's an ancient book, so that's why people have to tidy up. But in this tome, and contained and very clearly the order of we know as Dao De Jing, but actually the original Dao De Jing and just should be opposite, like upside down. So like De first, Dao is the second.
Is it the same book, or is it different, or is it something added?
It's actually it's less than 2,000 words, but it's super content. It's very much emphasized the Tao is the universe as the oneness they start from, but from the Tao, yes, and then there's the two, from 1 to 2 then the 3, but they said how is that happening? Actually is because because the virtue. So they emphasize because the virtue with the Tao, when the virtue full, and then the Tao can be manifested.
Right.
Without De, and then the Tao cannot be exist. So that means the De is more important. So that we're talking about virtue. They said, well, in the human.
So the De is the virtue.
De is the virtue. So that's why if you are virtuous very high, and of course your society will be much more in line with the nature, and then will be much more harmonious. So that's the De, when they go into the human body, so and then they start divided into 5 virtue, 5 De. So each De has been in collaborate with the 5 organs, which in the Chinese medicine they're called 5 elements. And of course, that's 5 elements are also even connecting with the 5 stars around the earth. So that's why it's the height of the big system as like a cosmos module, but reflect into the human. But that's why that De Dao Jing hasn't been appeared in the translation in the West yet. But that's a very profound discovery. I just want to mention that here because that's will be start opening up the understanding why our Earth have such kind of a challenge, and the crisis we face is because we need to go back to find the original. What's the De Dao Jing has been described. How is the virtue important? And then the whole what we talking about the truth. So that's why it's that Yellow Emperor medicine book, and let me make them short. Otherwise, you have to say Yellow Emperor canon
Sure.
medicine book. Okay, Yellow Emperor medicine book, which is to mention that the emperor very, very curious about how the Earth has been designed, and how to find the rule, how to running it to make us good society. So that's why he's been told by the teacher as a doctor. So I just want to mention that actually in Chinese system and Chinese society, the view the doctor are very high, because doctor need to be as a sage, because that's why they said if you cannot be as a consultant or teacher of the emperor or the politician, and then you could be a doctor. Because the treating the human body as a small cosmos or small society. But of course, if you understand your body so well, you understand that cosmology inside the body as a holograph system, and then you can apply that kind of knowledge to advise the politician how to governing the country and the society. So that has been carried on for centuries, the people's deep understanding about what is doctors about. So of course that's why this book to mention that the first, the highest, the human being we call the immortal. So the immortal is, of course, they follow the Tao. They can master yin and yang. They can traveling through the space and time, and then they can hear far away distance, and then knowing far away what's happening. Well, nowadays we could say that people have the ESP actually, or wise man. So, and their age is go on with the sun and the moon. So it's ageless.
They transcend yin and yang.
Yes, so that's why you can see, yes, of course they were talking about the soul, but lots of people say, is that body still remained? But interestingly, there's lots of sage, and they could take their body departed. I'm sure lots of people say the film, and then say that's a master meditate, and then gradually only say the clothes remained, but that body not there. So from the ancient wisdom, we understand that that is not a legendary or man-made story. That was happening in the history quite a lot. So that's why the state, the immortal, is the number one. So the number two is achieved man. Achieved man, of course, they also and then go on with their the nature, and then knowing the yin yang, and then they can also achieve the very high state, and then they're living as long as they can be. So the third one is we call the true man. The true man is they're really in tune with the yin and yang, and then they follow the yin and yang and the forces, and then they cultivate themselves, and then they can managing living as long as possible, and then without deteriorate, and then they really respect what nature is about, and knowing the food, knowing the body, and then the managing and in tune the true nature. So the last one we call sage. So the sage is follow the yin and yang. Can you see the difference? In the previous one, the master yin yang, and then they're in tune yin yang. But this one, the sage is follow the yin yang. So, and then they are in the daily society, and then they are very happy what they have got, and then their mind very peaceful. They are very in line with nature intent, so they not have too much desire. So they not really get them upset easily. So they wearing the ordinary clothes, they're very satisfied. So basically, they don't have so much over desire, because they have a desire, they could have a children, have a, and the kids and a wife or husband, whatever. They're living an ordinary people's life, but they won't be exhausted by any accessory desire. So therefore, and they respect the other people, and then they respect the nature, and then they are holding their integrity, and then that's why they're living quite long life. And of course, there can be teaching the other people. For example, Confucius is being categorized as sage.
Right. He's only a sage.
Yeah, he's a sage. So, and then of course there's a medical doctor, and quite a number of the medical doctor in Chinese history, they called it the true man, because they're living very, very long, and then they can connecting lots of energy conducting. So, like Sun Si Miao. So, okay, that's why this book has been described very, very clearly, and has that the human being need to be like this. So if a human being have such kind of a virtue in line with the Tao, in line with the we call it nature or divine within, so that's why they can be not get sick. That's very interesting. They are really the ancient, we call the classical Chinese medicine book, is talking about the highest virtue of the doctor. They put much more emphasis about how to get people have a peaceful mind. And also respect each other and follow the heaven and earth rule, and then so follow the four season. The season like a spring, your energy rise and everything's open, the flowers and the trees are growing, so your energy is growing. And then summers, and then that's much more open and plenty of sunshine, so you're going out to express that. And then autumn, they become fruity, and then leaves goes down, so your body start gradually bring the energy coming in. In the winter get cold, you start restore your energy. So that's why their whole book describing vividly and very detailedly about how can you do that.
So sort of looping this all in together, would you say that the sage is sort of someone who can be in harmony with nature, and that's the importance of being a sage? Is it just for someone who wants to be a doctor, or is it a state that anyone can achieve? What do you think the importance of the sage attaining that state is?
Yeah, it's of course, and put it the other way, the doctor needs to be as a sage. But sage not necessarily as a doctor profession. So Confucius is teacher, but he's not doctor. So they could be sage. So that means the sage is type of the quality of your mind and your behavior and your virtue in the daily life. How can you conduct yourself with nature? So, and but of course, in the ancient time, doctor must be a sage.
Right.
I put this way. So if you're not sage, how can you to make sure people not get sick? So because the doctor have, and nowadays we always think how a doctor can treat disease, but in ancient time they said the superior doctor make sure the village and the people around them not get sick. So they are the middle levels of the doctors, and they probably just managing people fairly good, but they could get cold or small kind of a disease, but they can use very simple like porridge and different herbs or different methods and breathing or whatever, and the method to keep them to recover. But the lower levels of the doctor is busy treating people very sick because they're waiting for people very sick to come to them. So that's one of the reasons, as of course. So in this case, so we can see they already mentioned what a sage is about or what a Chinese medicine doctor should be.
Preventative.
Much more.
So looping this in with the 5 virtues that you were talking about in the Dao Jing, because most people hear of Dao De Jing, and I've heard other people say that they just follow the Dao and they increase the strength of their organs. And they don't think about being a good person, but because their organs are in line, that is what makes them compassionate as like a side effect. But you're saying that the original book Lao Tzu wrote was the other way around, and it was the virtues first.
Yes, exactly, because Lao Tzu already described that, said when you were virtue is a fool, because you're in the state is not about yourself, you're in line with nature. So therefore you can conducting your 5 virtue, because the 5 virtue is not leaking. But if you left that kind of a oneness or the state, so and then you're going to the 5 virtue, so that's a 5 virtue and can be easily disappeared in the daily life. It depends on the value system. For example, the first virtue is the ren in Chinese, so an equivalent in English as compassionate.
Right.
So it's like if you have the love and compassion to the society, to the people near you, and then including yourself, so your energy gets strong, everybody else getting better. Right, so that's the much more above the heart energy, and so that's the virtue. It's need to be there all the time. So the second virtue is the E, is a rectitude. Okay, yeah, please say rectitude. That in my English.
Rectitude.
Rectitude, yes, that's brilliant. So that is the moral code. What is a moral code? Is like you have the scale inside yourself to know what is the virtue is about. For example, the sage type of people, because it's always the other people first and always respect the other people. So those people, and their heart so open, and then for the other people, so those people need to be respected and then need to be expressed or need to be put on the first. But the other people, it's like selfish, and then they are very destructive to the society. And those kind of people, you really need to stand up to hold almost like justice. That's called morals. But this part, and then to show on the daily life, like for example, my friends, she was very, very concerned about Earth. Every time she pick up the plastic bag from the forest. So I can see that the virtue aspect, so to show on the action. But could be some other people don't care. So that's also to show that's kind of the moral code. And what you think, what you reflect on your action. So this part can be trained and told. Because if everybody starts constantly and then acting on that, and then gradually it's become a better society. So that's the second. The third one in Chinese called Li, means respect. So the respect means when you were say they are an elderly, so elderly, and then the physically deteriorate, you need to help them to do the things and take care. But the little one, their energy is very weak, you need to also protect them. So, and also some other people from long distance to come visit you, so you need to show your warmness and to receive them. That's all part of the Li. As respect. Also, that respect is can be showing on the how to respect ancient wisdom, on to respect something you feel, and much more the higher energy, or even respect the universal law. or the whatever you put in divine or whatever. So because even they are invisible, but it's not maybe beyond our understanding, but we still need to respect some of the force we're working with, because in Chinese ancient wisdom said, if your virtue high, you understand that this is always invisible compassion is above you. So that's called respect. So the other part in Chinese called zhi, virtue is zhi, we translate as wisdom. But also they're including the knowledge. It's like a wisdom, you have something deep to understand what's happening, and also you have knowledge you can learn. So that is why they put under the fourth one, because this one can be show people can talk very well. You have lots of knowledge, but you need to have a good heart, so have a compassion to be able to lead it. So that's why in De Dao Jing that said, if people are too clever, they don't have a heart. So we don't really concerned that they have a wisdom.
Right.
That's not called wisdom. Is it there's to put this way, they're stupid, because they just want to showing off how much they know.
Right.
Well, the wisdom always like when the people reach the wisdom, they become so humble. They don't showing up, but they're doing the right things at the right time to help the others. So the last one, the fifth, is in Chinese called xin. Actually, there's English called the honor, or could be the trust and the faith. It's very much in the daily life. If you honor something else, and you're really acting as like what you said, you will do it. So the other people will trust you. They will honor that. And then because you have a high standard morally, so therefore that's why they become trustful to be able to relate it to each other. So that's kind of an honor. Of course, lots of business world also talking about that. Even I heard from Jackie Ma, he talking that. He said, fundamentally, we don't do the trick. We just really want to honestly get things, the trading happening, not doing like behind things or an abnormal, out of the moral standard. So that's the five virtue. Actually, what is the Dao Jing also mentioned that. It said, if without not follow the virtue as the big virtue, and then there's a five virtue could be gradually deteriorate. But this five virtue, interestingly, is connecting with our each organs. So therefore, if we have the virtue and the moral code inside us, so that we'll be able to strengthen your energy. That's why in the Huangdi Neijing mentions that why a sage can be very busy, but they're not deteriorate. Because their mind not busy, because they're not have too much desire. So that's why they don't deteriorate. So it's interesting. Lots of people were thinking, oh, we should rest and relax, and then we get better. So that's why so many people rest. It doesn't work because the moral standard not that there. But if people morals high, even they're busy doing the work, like people build a house and get lots of good things done, and then they're charged by doing so, because their moral standard high and get a very high energy to be able to function, and on the daily life more creative, rather than said, oh, I'm tired, I need sleep, rest, definitely we need it. But that's needed to follow the nature rule.
That's interesting. A few things come into mind there. One is that when you're reading those, I remembered that I heard something similar in Confucianism. But this is actually, Confucius took this from the Dao Jing beforehand. Is that correct?
I haven't really checked the history, whether it took, but it sounds like there's historical stories talking about Confucius has been trying to visit Lao Tzu,
right,
to ask guidance. So when he will see Lao Tzu, just say, "Oh my, that's a man, it's a great, significant, amazing." So of course, if you see as the documentary part, and the Dao Jing is very early, and also even Lao Tzu is older than Confucius.
Yeah, why I mention it is thought it was interesting was because when you're looking at those 5 virtues, they could seem like it's almost an external thing in how you interact with society. But I could see how, coming from Lao Tzu's perspective, when you're talking about the empty mind, where you can't go to sleep and have an empty mind, not because of something external, but because you're not living in a certain way, so that impacts your ability to be in harmony with yourself.
Yes, because when you were compassionate, like and the Japanese science measure above the water. If you mentioned that, to make me thinking about, he measured water. If it put compassion and love, the water structure is a beautiful crystal. So that really means the virtue, if it's high, you're energetically sitting. We are 75% of water. So your energy system will be charged by your mind, by your virtue. So that's one of the reasons, of course, Confucius learned from that. He started realize, we need to teach people how to be a virtue. But of course, from Lao Tzu, he already knows that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why he mentioned that. I'm sure that's deep connection.
Very interesting. So what do you feel like, if someone wants to become a sage, what are the first steps they can become to attaining that state?
Well, as a society now, what it is, because first need to be have the humbleness and the willingness want to learn and practice. It's like you need to kind of like people, if you want to say, so if you want to learn and to become, so that's very, very good to start, because at least you have a goal.
Right.
You want to reach that. But the second part, to understand what a sage is, what is it like, and then what their mindset is about. And then you start understand what is cosmos design, what the 4 seasons about, and how can you, in line with that, with the specific way. For example, like you start respect nature, you follow the rhythms of the day. And then you start to do more service as to understand you yourself as very small blink of the like drop of water. So you need to be with the big ocean and sea to be able to make impact. So therefore you start respecting others and also do the service. And of course there's a lot of deep knowledge and wisdom can be learned. So that's why what we have been doing as a classical Chinese medicine society, as the Chinese medicine group doctor. So we feel like quite important to spreading that kind of understanding and knowledge and wisdom. So that's why we have been running their 4 season retreat for years. But of course, that hasn't been try to going out to talk to people. It's like wait for the people who resonant to be able to do that. But of course, the first step is to come in from inside. You feel that resonant with you, and then very humbly start to learn the classical teaching and then practice with it.